Today I want to dive into the new GTE range from Amazfit and find out what it's all about and how it fits in this rapidly growing lineup from Amazfit. Welcome back to another episode of STU'S Reviews. Now, before we get on to these two, the GTR and GTS watches were some of my favourite smartwatches from Amazfit, and a couple of months ago they updated them by bringing out these two, the GTR and GTS 2, along with about a million other devices at the same time. As you know, I've been covering Amazfit devices what seemingly feels like non-stop for the past couple of months. Well, we're coming to the end of that now because I'm hoping they're not going to bring out anything else. They've literally brought out hundreds of stuff. Anyway, the GTS and GTR 2 are some fantastic, astoundingly different smartwatches to their first versions. There's tons of new features such as the Amazon Echo voice service integrated into them, internal storage so that you can play music on the run without having to take your phone. There's loads of cool stuff. And unfortunately at the moment I haven't actually covered either of these in an individual review on the channel, because I just haven't gotten round to it. But those are coming, so stay tuned for that. But now the range has gotten even more confusing because they brought out these two, which are the GTR and GTS 2E. I mean, everybody likes options, but what does it mean for people who want to buy an Amazfit device? What are the E range and how does it fit in to their existing lineup? And that is what I'm going to be doing today. Now, to make things easier, I'm going to refer to the standard GTS and GTR 2 as the main range, and the GTS and GTR 2E I'm going to refer to as the E range. So you won't hear me say GTR, GTS very much from now on. It's just going to be the main range, the E range. And the E range is the new stuff that predominantly we're looking at how it's different today. So, firstly, let's have a look at the design differences. With the screens, they all run the same AMOLED quality, which I loved from the original GTS range. So there's not much of a difference there. What is different, though, is the profile of the glass covering the display. The main range has what Amazfit calls their 3D curved glass, which is a distinctive curved glass over the display that's just beautiful. The new range, however, has a much lower profile. It's still curved, but not quite as much. This is extremely prominent in the GTS over the GTR. Along with the form factor change, there's also a slight difference in the material they've used. With the main range, it uses a diamond-like carbon coating, which is extremely resilient to things like scratches, whereas the E range uses a vacuum coating technique, which is much cheaper to produce, but just isn't quite as hard. Other than this glass design change, there are a few styling options that you won't get in the E range, such as the stainless steel options in the main range, and a few particular colours, although across the range you can find the same basic aluminium alloy style. Strangely, the main GTS is the only model to have a metal body on the back, with all other options in the E range and the GTR range having the same plastic back on them. Even the stainless steel option has this plastic back. It's a bit of an unusual thing considering this is the only one out of all of them that has that metal back. There must be a reason for it, but what that reason is, I have no idea. But it would be nice to see the same metal back on all of them in the future. Now, the feature set between all four is pretty similar, but there are some subtle differences between the two. The main range, you can actually take and receive phone calls directly from the watch. Now this means if you get a phone call, you can answer it on the watch and you can continue to speak to someone and you'll be able to hear what they say. And that's because it has an inclusion of a microphone and a speaker. The GTE range, on the other side, doesn't have a speaker. It still has a microphone, which is important for the Amazon Echo voice service, but it won't have that speaker, so you can't hear those calls. You'll still be able to see notifications pop up across all of them, and you'll still be able to answer the phone call, but the audio will go straight to your phone rather than going to the watch itself. So that could be one of the reasons you might want to go for the main range over the E range. The health tracking is also the same across the board. Buying one, you'll find that it'll have the same data as the other, for example, so it doesn't matter which one you choose. The difference is when you go for an exercise, with the main range you can actually store music directly to the watch itself, and you get 3 GB of internal storage. This means that if you wanted to go have a jog in the easy mode apocalyptic wasteland that we live in at the moment, you can simply go for a jog, put the music on the watch, and you don't have to take your phone with you, so you can't alert the police or the local gangs that you're being chased by cannibals. This range, the E-range, unfortunately doesn't have that internal storage, so you cannot listen to music on the go. The only other real main thing that sets these apart is the connection type. The E-range only uses Bluetooth 5, whereas this can use Bluetooth and it uses wireless as well. So that's a bunch of stuff that the main range has over the E-range. Now, what about the E-range over the main range? Surprisingly, the E-range has a temperature sensor built into the watches, which the main range doesn't. Now, this means that you can monitor your internal body temperature directly from your watch. Another interesting and important piece about your health that you can track and monitor as you go on. And it's a bit of a shame that it's not in the main range, but good that they've started to include it in their watches going forward. So that is an awesome addition to the E-range. Another thing you'll find about the E-range is that because it doesn't have that onboard memory, because it only connects via Bluetooth, and because it has a couple of those things that aren't quite as advanced as the main range, the battery life is a lot better. It's nearly double, in fact. It's nearly double than the main range over standard use. That means the GTR 2E, but no, that's the GTS. The GTR 2E, which has the bigger battery out of the two, can last for nearly 45 days on a single charge, which is just crazy. So given that there are some emissions from the E-range, but there are also some advancements in the E-range, do you think that this is more expensive than the main range? Let's play a game. I want you to pause the video right now, go down to the comments and type, I think that the E-range is either more expensive or cheaper. And then press play again. And when you've done that, you can then go back and comment underneath that and tell me if you were wrong. Discuss why you thought that. But the truth behind it is that the E-range is a lot cheaper. It's about 25% cheaper than the main range. Let's look at something like the GTS, for example. You can get this for about 170, around that sort of mark, the GTS2. Well, the GTS2e you can get for about 130. So it is a lot cheaper than the main range. And this is where the important point comes from. And partly, I think, the reason Amazfit had decided to bring out the E-range. Over the past year, they've brought out a lot of devices, especially in the past couple of months. We've seen so many different devices. But all of those devices have come with a slightly higher cost than what we're used to with Amazfit devices. Let's look at something like the original GTS. That was about £130 when it came out. Now with the GTS2, yes, it's got tons and tons of new features. Overall, it's a better smartwatch than the original version. But consequently with that, it's much more expensive. Now, the original one being cheaper, this is the thing that I believe that a lot of people loved about Amazfit devices. It was the price to value ratio. At the end of the day, you were paying 130 quid for an AMOLED smartwatch with a ton of features in it. It was incredible, unbeatable value. And I think at the slightly higher prices that we've been seeing from Amazfit, a few people were a bit disgruntled by that. Not necessarily the people that wanted the awesome features of the GTS and GTR 2, but potentially those people that just wanted something budget but still wanted an incredible smartwatch. And this is where the E-range fits in my eyes, because this is going back to basics. It's taking away some of the more advanced features of the main range, but still leaving some of the core advancements that it's got. Things like the Echo integration. But making it budget friendly, making that price to value ratio even better than it was before, because you're paying the same amount as, say, the first GTS and GTR, but you're getting way more features involved in these devices. So I absolutely loved that. Overall, I'm really pleased with it. But there is one more thing, and I think it's best that I just show you. the GTS Mini. Despite its size, it still manages to punch above its weight with its AMOLED display, a near 3-week battery and a feature set that comes really close to its bigger sisters, but with a few mini differences. Firstly, it's not able to control music playback on your phone. Not a huge deal, but something that you might miss. It also doesn't have any form of offline voice assistant that's new to the entire lineup, but it can, however, still work with the Echo voice service. It also uses a standard vibration motor rather than haptic feedback style. The health tracking is nearly identical, but unlike its bigger siblings, it can only track 70 individual exercise types rather than 90. And the best thing about it is that it will set you back only 90 quid. Again, this thing is just such a great decision by Amazfit because it is bringing it back to basics. 90 quid for what is essentially an incredible little smartwatch that does a hell of a lot with an AMOLED display and Amazon Echo voice integration. That is just price to value crazy. Honestly, this is one of my favourite devices from Amazfit, and I'll be taking a look at this in a future episode really soon. So if you like today's episode, hit that subscribe and hit that notification bell as well, and you'll get to see that when it lands. But like I said, I think the new E range, we just put those over there. Now I know I've said it already, but I love how these devices have brought Amazfit back to basics. I think there was a bit of concern from a lot of the fan base about the price of the new watches, and I think there was a bit of concern from me seeing how many different models there are being released. It was becoming a bit truncated. But after sitting down and getting my head wrapped around the differences and what these are for and who they're for, it's much clearer to me, and hopefully today's video has made it much clearer for you about what these E-range devices are for. Ultimately, just that price to value, budget friendly option that everybody loves about Amazfit. It's back to basics. It really is. But other than that, guys, if I have helped you get your head around it, or I have helped you explain a little bit more about the entire Amazfit GT range that they've got out at the moment, don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe, and I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.